Hi, I'm Doug Ross, the screenwriter behind The Guests of the Emperor. This story is inspired by true events from World War II. It follows an untrained American officer, Allied prisoners of war, and brave Chinese captives who endure brutal conditions in Japanese-occupied China. Together, they unite to combat their ruthless adversary, a sadistic Japanese-American officer. The narrative begins with a flash forward. Lieutenant William Anderson witnesses an unarmed American soldier murdered by Japanese guards during the infamous Bataan Death March. Anderson is a family man and a career Army engineer, designing dams and bridges. He's reassigned to the Philippines where he meets Robert Perry, a British Army major and MI6 officer who becomes his mentor. On the same day as Pearl Harbor is attacked, the Japanese strike the Philippines. Undermanned and without proper weapons, American troops are left defenseless. Filipino guerrillas are first to ambush Japanese soldiers using bicycles to make quick advances. But the guerrillas are overwhelmed by tank and artillery strikes. The American cavalry makes a suicidal last charge on horseback, only to be decimated by enemy fire. Inexperienced as a military officer, Anderson is sent to the front lines, but cowardly abandons his men under fire.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
After the Allies' humiliating surrender, Anderson, Perry, and the entire army become prisoners of war. They are forced to walk 65 miles to Camp Cabanatuan in what survivors call the Bataan Death March, where thousands die of wounds, dehydration, and outright murder by Japanese troops. This marks the beginning of Anderson's transformation as they are moved to Manchuria to work as laborers in a Japanese munitions plant. During an inhumane hell ship voyage, men are crammed into wooden cages and forced to stand in feces, blood, and vomit. October 1942, Anderson and Perry left the Philippines aboard the hell ship Tatori Maru, sailing with its sister ship, the Lisbon Maru. With a brief stop at Formosa, they headed for Korea. The Lisbon Maru sank in minutes, taking 850 lives, while Anderson's ship only sustained damage to one propeller. They steamed north to Korea for an awaiting train to Mukden, China. At the POW camp in Japanese-controlled China, Anderson struggles with the harsh realities of his confinement, but finds support from Major Perry and Lao Gao, a Chinese factory foreman. Gao saves Li Shui, a farm boy, who encounters the camp villain, Lieutenant Murata, a bitter and murderous Nisei from San Francisco, whose parents are interned in a Utah camp. Anderson and Perry plan covert actions to disrupt their forced labor at the Japanese munitions plant. With the help of Lao Gao and the young Li Shui, they engage in sabotage, rendering the machine gun parts unusable. Gao provides medicines and an illegal map of China to help POWs plan their escape. Military doctors from the infamous Unit 731 arrive and begin barbaric biological experiments. They torture American POWs with tainted fruit and biotoxins. Witnessing the torture of a fellow soldier profoundly changes Anderson's perception, and he takes on a leadership role among the POWs. Confronting Lieutenant Murata and other captors, Anderson is then forced into solitary confinement, and tortured by Murata. Three Americans escape the camp, but are captured weeks later in Outer Mongolia, returned severely beaten, and then executed without trial. Lao Gao's life is spared, but he is imprisoned with other Chinese captives in the Japanese Kempeitai prison. Allied bombing mistakenly targets the POW camp, killing many soldiers and Chinese villagers. Anderson is deeply depressed, withdrawn, and all seems lost. Until months later, a smuggled news headline reveals the war in Europe has ended. Anderson quickly recovers and plans more sabotage against the Japanese. Then one morning, he and Major Perry witness a blinding light in the sky, the atomic bomb flash from Hiroshima, hundreds of miles away. Just days later, OSS commandos parachute onto the Lee farm and liberate the nearby POW camp, signaling the war's end. A Chinese nationalist army captain and the townspeople liberate the dreaded Kempeitai prison. The captain arrests their former jailers, who will await war crime trials and quick executions. Local hero Lao Gao is released and begins rebuilding his community with his new confidant, Li Shui. Anderson returns home to his loving family, forever changed by his traumatic experiences, and suffers from PTSD. One day after a round of golf with friends, he is shocked to see a Unit 731 doctor collaborating with the U.S. Army, being driven into a high-security base near his home. After a brief relapse into flashbacks and despair, Anderson realizes he is a survivor, given a second chance to love his family. The war is finally behind him.